And welcome back. I want to put a bit of a disclaimer on the beginning of this video. You're going to see me install the front crank seal, which you're seeing here in the image, which goes on the front of the timing cover. I'm going to use a little bit of unconventional way of doing it. There's an actual tool that you can purchase from the actual factory tool, that is, and what it's meant to do, and I'll explain this a bit more in the video. But you can actually, there's a tool you can buy to actually remove this while it's still on the vehicle, and there's a tool you can buy to actually install this seal while it's still on the vehicle. Now, I don't have that tool, obviously, and I did look up some pricing on that, and even a third-party version of that tool is well in excess of about 150 to about 200 some odd bucks, depending on who you get it from. So not wanting to spend that kind of money for a seal driver, basically, and I'm sure there's probably a seal driver kit out there that would do just as good a job as the factory. You're going to see me use a 2x4 block to get it flush, and then you're going to see me come in with a piece of lumber that we shaved down to fit inside the bore and hit the outside lip of that seal to finish driving it the rest of the way. So my disclaimer is, don't do it the way I've done it. If you feel more comfortable going out and getting a seal driver, or maybe having someone else drive that seal in there for you, by all means. I understand that some people are probably going to watch this video and just lose their minds in the comments, and I get it. It's not an ideal way to drive a seal in, and I admit that, and that's why I say that my videos are more for documentation on how I'm doing it. They're not instructional. So I just wanted to get that out there, that yeah, what you're going to see is unorthodox, but it did allow us to get our crank seal installed. And with that being said, I will cut in the rest of the video, and I will chat at you later. Thank you. And welcome back. In the previous video, we got our cylinder heads torqued down to ARP's specifications. And what you see here before us is the timing cover that we have on the bench. We're going to do a little bit of work to this. We need to remove what is left of this pickup tube. This is one of the coolant hoses, comes into this tube, which seats with an O-ring in the timing cover, and this is where our water pump would normally set. I've got to get the remainder of this tube out, because if you remember, we did cut some of the coolant hoses just because it was easier to slice them and buy new hose than trying to wrangle and get the seals to break loose. But the reason why I'm removing that tube, and we hadn't before, is that this tube, as you can see, when you order that particular, and this is one of the EGR cooler hoses, comes with a new end piece. So it's not just the hose that you get, you actually get the whole assembly. And to show you that part number, there it is right there, once again from mymoparparts.com, with the Chrysler part numbers above that. So we're going to work on getting the rest of this tube out of here. It just kind of, again, seats with an O-ring, so that's what I'm fighting, getting that out. I ordered a couple of non-OEM crank seals for the front of the timing cover, because at the time that I ordered the actual Mopar one, it was on back order. But as luck would have it, when the third-party ones came in, so did the actual Mopar one. But the actual Mopar part number for that seal is right there. Again, this is for a 6.4 liter, 2016. We also found a third party, and I've used their seals before, and I have no problem with it. That's their part number for that seal. And we also picked up a Timken, and let me find the part number for that one. It looks like that's it right there. Let's see what we got here in the back. Yep, okay, that's the barcode for it on the back. And I just did a quick comparison. Yeah, they all seem to be the same seal and look like they'll all do a good job. Again, I've used Timken products before. And I've used this other manufacturer here. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'll probably butcher it. I have no problem using Timken or this other manufacturer here. But since our OEM seal did come in, I'll go ahead and stick with the OEM one. Now, if something happens to this during the install process or gets damaged in any way, you know, we've got a couple of backups that we can use. But just to kind of give you some part numbers or some, you know, third-party options in case you need them. We're getting our bolts ready for our reinstall. If you remember this in a previous video, we marked these as some specialty bolts for this timing cover. And see, this one says right upper shoulder bolt. So that's the one that has the, you notice has a spacer, has a space on it. It's not threaded all the way. That is the bolt that is going to go up here. Like this is the top of the timing cover. You're looking at it upside down, but you'll notice this one has kind of a sleeve in it. A spacing sleeve. That is where that bolt goes. Right top bracket, you'll notice it's a little stubby bolt, and during our disassembly process, that bolt goes right there on the top of this timing cover. So this is the top of the cover, this is the driver's side of it, and you remember the driver's side cylinder head has that little bar, that little horseshoe shaped metal bar that bolts into there. That center bolt is for that one. And finally, the last one, left top rear coolant hold down. So left top rear, looks like it's going to be on this side. Top rear, meaning, yeah, right there. So more than likely, and I'll go back and look at my notes, but that should be that bolt that holds that coolant tube in place that we're getting ready to remove. And you'll notice that bolt is double-sided, so more than likely there's another piece that fits on here or a wiring loom that presses in place, you know, one of the two. But these aren't necessarily, you're really the only two critical ones to do the timing cover install. Right now we're just going to be the top one here, the middle one, and if we go back to our bag of hardware that we have marked timing cover, we've got 3 more bolts in here, and this is what would have normally be a factory bolt, but if you remember, we're running a Pro Charger on here, so this is the mount. You remove the factory bolt, use this instead. This serves as a factory bolt, but it also serves as a mounting point for the supercharger bracket. So we need a handful of bolts, but first and foremost, we need to get this seal changed out. We need to get the remnants of this old EGR coolant tube out of this cover, and then we'll get the new seal on it. And I did go third party on the replacement timing cover seal, and let me get you the part number for that one. Because at the time, and I think it's still the case, that timing cover seal from a couple places I've looked at are kind of on, you know, the old indefinite back order. And again, I've used seals by this company before and have no problem with it, so I've got no problem doing that here. Now, I'm not going to go too crazy and cleaning up the whole exterior. Put that so it doesn't fall. The whole exterior of this, I might wipe this down a little bit just to get some of the crud off of it. But there are a couple of spots on here where they're using this cover to ground out a couple of connections. And I think what these are starting capacitors, because you'll notice it only has a single connection point. So it's using the bolt into the timing cover to serve as a ground. You know, so you don't want to do anything like, you know, try to paint this or make it look a bit flashy, because you might be, you know, inhibiting necessary connectivity at that point. So like I said, I'll go over this kind of briefly. We'll get that seal changed out. We'll get this out, and then we'll get that new timing cover seal put into the back of this, and then I'll bring it back for that. But I'm going to work on getting that out, and we'll bring it back. Thank you much. And welcome back. As you can see, we've got our timing cover. We got the old seal removed. I just used a little brute force with a punch driver on the back half of the seal. Hit it a couple of times with a hammer here and here and got the old seal to pop out. Now, if you remember earlier when we spoke, we went over 3 part numbers for this seal, and one of them was the OEM seal from Mopar. Ran into an issue during that seal with the install. I nicked part of the seal where I shouldn't have nicked it, and thus had to remove it. So what I was doing was, because not having the actual seal driver or Mopar seal install tool, what the Mopar seal install tool looks like is a little metal cup that sits inside, in between these 2 things of rubber, from what I can tell from looking at the pictures, pushes against that metal ring going around there, and threads, has a bolt that goes through it, through the cup, into the crankshaft, and you can actually install this seal with this cover still on the motor. So not having that tool, what I used was a piece of 2x4 to drive it in, which worked. I got it flush with the cover, but the problem is this seal wasn't seated all the way against this bottom ring here. So I was using this seal with its edge just to kind of place over it and finish tapping it down. And what ended up happening was that this metal lip ended up cutting into an area of the seal on this one. Now, it wasn't the sealing surface that the crank pulley would ride in, but still didn't want to have any issues with it. So I went ahead and popped it out, and what we'll use is the Timken seal in this case. So not having that tool, and I hope this works. If it doesn't, I may have to buy a set of seal drivers and find something that will. Because the actual tool to install that via threading it onto the crank is pretty pricey. I happen to have this piece of lumber which almost just fit the very inside diameter of this seal bore. So you can see I shaved a little bit off, just a little bit off each corner, and now this fits down in there pretty well and does a pretty good job of staying on that that outside edge. So I'm hoping that once we get the seal driven flat, I can just kind of take this, turn it like this, tap, 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 keep turning, and finally get that seal to seat. Because I just don't have something that's got, either will sit flush with that outside lip and still drive it down, or something big enough to catch that inside metal lip to finish driving this in place. Also, per the manual, we've gotten this cleaned out and dry. They say that this seal should be installed dry. They make an actual note to say to do not put any lubrication on the outside of this or on the seal bore, which is fine. If that's what we want, that's what we'll try. Now, you'll see the ribs on this seal. I'm just going to take it and kind of manually just place it down in there. And it looked okay. It just hit the first of that rib, and I just want to make sure I'm getting it in there at least straight. I'm going to push that plastic cup down a little bit. I'm going to take our 2x4 like last time. Just place it on the front of that seal and just tap it in place, going around in the circle. Oh, sorry, late warning, headphone users. I'll give you a minute to turn things down before I start that again. Now you hear that tone change? Now right now that seal is flush. Yep, with that timing housing. You can tell that because it started to sound more like block hitting the wood rather than the seal being driven in. But with that and that seal sitting flush, the way that it is, there's a little bit of a gap, and maybe I can turn this over and show it to you. You can see that, hopefully you can see that down in there. You can see that gap between the back of the seal and that timing cover. It's not quite seated. It's got just a little bit to go, and it'll be home free. Like I said, it might be hard for you to, I don't know, hopefully you can kind of see that down in there where that back of that seal is at. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to get you in there. But what I can do, I'm going to get some light on this subject here. Yeah, it's got maybe a millimeter, maybe 2 before it seats. Let's see, maybe I can show you using this. Let's see if you're still in frame. Hopefully you are. I can take this screwdriver, and you can see I can put that screwdriver blade between the bottom of here and the bottom of the seal. So that seal doesn't have far to go, but now our issue is getting something to finish pushing that seal in place. And I know what you're saying, seal driver, and if I had one that would work for this application, I would use it. So I'm going to take our little board here, which just sits on the outside edge of that seal, but it's small enough to allow us to go in a little bit so it doesn't get hung up on the outside. And I'm just going to hit it, tap it, hit it, tap it, hit it, tap it, and just kind of walk it all the way around. And rather than making you suffer through another set of headphone loudness, I'm going to go ahead and pause it, see if I can go ahead and get this done, and then I'll bring you back. And welcome back. So I just want to let you know that that did work. As you saw, we put the block of 2x4 on there first, got it flush, and then just used our little makeshift tool here, which again, you can see it here. Hopefully you can see that it fits enough of that diameter that you can countersink into the bore, but it hits the outside of the seal. So all I was doing was hitting the top corner, tap, tap, turn, tap, tap, turn, tap, tap, turn, and just kept working my way around. Just, again, gingerly hitting it, not trying to go too animalistic with it. Working my way around and just kept hitting the same end of this board, just, again, turning, 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 until I was able to hear a little bit of a change in the tone. And I'm going to flip this around, and hopefully you can see this. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get this into the shot. But that screwdriver is now hitting a seal. Whereas before, it may have been hard to see in the camera, but there was a gap between the bottom of the seal bore and the seal itself. And now all the way around, it's hitting seal. There's no more of a gap. So it looks like it's got it driven home all the way to where it needs to go. Because you'll notice even on this one, this is the back half of the old seal, there is a gap between this plastic cardboard type piece and the bottom of the seal. So that gap is pretty normal. The gap I was seeing earlier was from the actual bottom of the seal itself here to the actual bottom of the bore. So that looks like that did take care of it. That tool did work. Again, it was just a piece of lumber that we happen to have that almost fit the inside of it. And we just shaved down the corners of it so it would be small enough to go down further into this bore, but also still be wide enough. And as you can see here, and the seal is a bit distorted, but as you can see, it just hits the outer edge of that seal. So we just rotate as we tap, and that looks like that took care of it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get the timing cover seal installed. I cleaned this up a little bit, but I didn't go too heavy into it, because this flat area that you see here on this timing cover, all throughout here, this is not your sealing surface. Your sealing surface is your gasket that sits inside this channel, and it will actually stick up over this channel. So that way when you mash this timing cover in place, that's what forms your seal. So I'm not super critical on cleaning up, you know, all of these flat spots because again, it's not a sealing surface. I may go through here with a little bit of red Scotch-Brite and just take some of this black stuff off here, and some of this looks to be a little bit of discolorization from the coolant and such, but again, I'm not going to go too heavily on it. I'm going to go ahead and work on that. We'll bring you back when that's done, and then once this is complete, the next thing we'll look on is to getting this installed onto our block, and then finishing up our oil pan install. And we'll bring you back when we get to those pieces. Thank you.